Hey guys, it's spooky season. The objective, factual, scientifically certified best time of the year. And during this time, I find myself returning to some of my favorite horror-based movies and games. I'll try out some new stuff too, but I gotta play some type of Resident Evil. I can't imagine not playing Bloodborne through every single year. And I don't even really care about Dead by Daylight, but I gotta play it at least like once this month.
Are we playing this right?
More than all of those though, I think the game that is a personal staple of all my Halloweens is Dead Rising 2. It's a game that I've played through a multitude of times now. It's definitely one of my personal favorites of all time. And most importantly, it's also a piece of shit. Dead Rising 2 is an irritating experience, full of a bunch of stuff that would kinda just really suck in any other game, but when the good, the bad, and the headache-inducing ingredients of this game mix together, they make something completely unique. It's a balancing act of things you're gonna like and things you're gonna hate, and the entire game would completely fall flat without both the good and the bad. To start off, Dead Rising was a series of zombie survival games produced by Capcom, where the general idea was having you go around these dense but contained game worlds and pushing through ginormous hordes of zombies to save survivors. There are 4 main games with a couple of DLC spin-offs, and out of all of these, I have played Dead Rising 2 and Dead Rising 2. From what I've seen and heard, a multitude of internal and external factors have led to Dead Rising 3 and 4 not being very good. And while the first game seems to be everybody's favorite, I'ma be honest, it's a bit too scary for me. Like, I don't mind the zombies or the blood or the body mutilation, but my heart's a little too weak to handle the game crashing on me multiple times and corrupting my PS4's database for some reason. Might have been a one-off thing, I don't know, I'm not taking any chances though. I'll just get on Xbox eventually. So yeah, Dead Rising 2 and Dead Rising 2 Off the Record. I've played a lot of these two games throughout the years, and while the base game is still amazing and worth playing itself, Off the Record 2 is basically just Dead Rising 2 except better. There are some differences in the original that some people might prefer, but for me, Off the Record is just the best way to experience the game. It adds an entire new section to the game's world, and instead of playing as the new guy, Chuck Green, with his child, you get to play as the old guy, Frank West, with his camera. So that's the version of the game I'm going to cover, though most of what I say can be attributed to both versions. But speaking of Frank, after the events of Dead Rising 1, Frank West is crowned a national celebrity, icon, and all-around hero. He falls off. After the Willamette incident, society hasn't collapsed or anything, they've kinda just gotten used to zombies. A game show called Terror's Reality has contestants killing zombies for entertainment, an activist group called Cure protests the show's exploitation of the dead, and a very strict daily supplement drug called Zombrex keeps infected people from turning into zombies. Anyways, Frank, in need of some money and recognition, travels to Fortune City, a big-ass mall/casino complex to take part in that night's Terror's Reality game, hosted by this guy, TK. The name sounds similar, I swear I wasn't. Just before Frank can leave with his earnings though, he spots something a little fishy going about, and moments after that there's a breach in the complex's defense, and the entire place is overrun with zombies.
Oh my god, no!
From there, the clock's ticking as Frank has to stave off zombies, find survivors, lead them to safety, defeat people who are worse than the dead, and uncover the truth before it disappears. All with the worst sense of deja vu. Now, I hope I didn't make the story sound too promising, because it's not. I don't even know if that's a controversial thing to say or not, because I've seen a lot of fans who are actually very passionate about the stories here. For me though, the story's not really good. But that's also kind of the point. It's the first part of this intricate balancing act, creating something like a serious spoof. I'd say it has around 3 modes that the plot, characters, and tone tend to fall into. The first mode is straightforward and serious, where it feels like a generic thriller movie and lacks any sort of charisma. The second mode is bombastically hysterical, with shit acting so unhinged that it's impossible to take seriously. And the third mode is, horny. The actual main story and main characters play mostly into the first mode. Specifically, the plot progresses pretty typically with a few twists and turns here and there, but the villains contrastingly are never in the first mode. Some of them are just evil assholes, but most of these people are psychopaths, the game's signature bosses who have been driven insane by the outbreak. This could legitimately be engaging, but these characters are so cartoonishly crazy that I can only ever see them as goofy. I'd say about half of them are insane, while the other half are just insanely horny. An enormous amount of the dialogue in this game is stuck pretty tight in the third mode, as almost everything that comes out of someone's mouth in this game is a pretty hard innuendo. Actually, I'd say about half the scenes in this game are just ass and titties getting shoved in your face. Though the survivors in this game are able to unlock a special 4th narrative mode, where everyone's a funny dumbass, but more on that later. Alone, these attributes aren't really anything to care about. It's either boring, dumb, or even dumber. But combined, they make a series of characters and events that, I don't know, they're kind of funny in a cosmic sort of way. Now, I got all these backhanded compliments, but there are some genuinely good parts to the story too. I think all the voice acting in this game is phenomenal, and that might not be apparent at first. The dialogue itself isn't very good, and the VAs are working with some very cheesy and very silly lines here, so they completely play into it. What you're left with are really fun performances from everyone, with nothing I just explained about the story working without them. I will also say that Off the Record actually fixes some problems I originally had with the main cast. They aren't the most fleshed out characters, but in this version, there are big differences that change how the original plot played out, and actually work to make these characters a little more interesting. Specifically the big changes in our main hero. Chuck Green was inoffensive as a lead, but his only real character trait was being a dad. The returning Frank West, on the other hand, is a lot more likable. He's got more personality. He can be cool sometimes, but he's also a little bit corny. He's serious when it comes to doing what's right and uncovering the truth, but also low-key a sassy goofball. The story isn't devoid of actual excitement or interest, but I always get this sense that I shouldn't actually be taking it seriously. That's not an insult though, it's its strength. Because without that sense of self-awareness, it's the textbook example of mid. A story that's actually well told and engaging would have also been cool, but this really works well for what this game is, and how it lends to the game world and the gameplay. Now, I described this game as a balancing act, but that doesn't really apply to its world. Fortune City is outstanding, without any caveats, just expertly designed and impressive. The aesthetic of the city's different locales are varied, but equally, infectiously vibrant and eye-catching. The malls are these easygoing, spacious centrals with just about every individual shop being enterable, and having their own themes and items. The casinos are these bustling money pits that, while attractive and fun feeling, can feel a little repetitive with just rows and rows of slot machines taking up the space. The Silver Strip is a lengthy park/extended mall section that connects most of the game's areas to each other. The Your Ass Zone is Off the Record's new inclusion, this alien-themed amusement park with a bunch of mini games and rides you can mess around with. The arena and construction area aren't ass stunning, but they have their own kind of charm, in a desolate kind of deserted sense. But they all combine to make a very comfortable and inviting environment that really speaks to your inner wanderlust. The only dead things here should be your self-restraint and savings, but the atmosphere makes a very funny contrast with the abundance of actually dead people. Relaxing elevator music playing over someone being eaten alive, not gonna lie, that's quite the chuckler right there. It's not just visually nice either, as the map is littered with secrets, alternate routes, and other opportunities that really reward exploration. It's an incredibly fun game world to get to know, which you will need to do if you want to survive. Dead Rising 2's gameplay loop is incredibly, enjoyably irritating. It's a stressful series of circumstances and restraints, and that's what makes it all fun in the moment and rewarding once it's momentarily over. In that sense, it's like a lot of other survival games, but the key differences here are in what you're struggling against, what you're struggling for, and what you have to help with that struggle. The first major distinction is the timer. When I said the clock was ticking, I didn't just mean for the story. The entire game's on a countdown timer of about 3 days before a playthrough ends, which translates to somewhere around 10 hours of real-life playtime. Technically, you can spend the entirety of the time goofing off, which leads to a bad ending. But if you actually want to do the missions and stuff, those work a little differently too. It's not just like a checklist of stuff you gotta do before the game ends. Each mission, survivor, and or event occurs at a specific time during the 3-day cycle, usually overlapping with each other, with only a limited amount of time to engage with them before the mission expires. Main missions work like this too, but if you miss even one of those main ones, you'll fail the entire story, with the only options you have being to reload your save and try to beat the mission before the time expires again, continue with this failed playthrough until the cycle ends, or just restart the campaign with all your current stats. On top of all of this, remember how I was talking about Zombrex, that drug that keeps people who should be turning into zombies unzombied? Well, Frank's infected too and needs a dose of it every day between 7 and 8 p.m. or AM, I'm not sure exactly. Problem is though that they are stupid expensive, and there's only like a handful of them laying around the world, so you gotta be ready to have those between 7 or 8 or he dies and you gotta reload and try to find some before the timer runs out again or restart. It's actually very fun, I promise. The second thingy is survivors. A big portion of the game has you leading people stuck around the mall back to the safe room. The singular safe room, for XP and other possible rewards. Now, usually people's top priority in their life is keeping it, but the game likes to be a little funny. It does a little trolling, and oftentimes you'll have to do something for them before you're granted the privilege of saving their life.
What do sloppy zombies get on their clothes?
Stains!
I am gonna murder these two!
Don't worry, they aren't just dumb in the context of their little side stories. It translates to gameplay too, as you're gonna constantly need to manage these people in these hordes to make sure they make it. If you abuse them too much, they'll defect, and if they died, well, you can reload if you want to try again, but their survival isn't necessary. Again, these survivors aren't just out and about in the world. Specific missions, specific and limited times, often overlapping, which means some of the game's biggest challenges are navigating around this entire zombie-infested place to collect people, beat bosses, and do story stuff in the most efficient, most fastest, and most not get anyone killed ways possible. Again, I gotta say, it's very fun, I promise. Third big difference in Dead Rising is that just about everything in the game's environment is a potential weapon. If Frank can hold it, he can probably kill something with it. I say probably because efficiency varies. Pipes and chairs, guns and cash registers, swords and stuffed bear toys, all can technically be used to hit people, but some have alternative, more useful uses. You could throw orange juice at a zombie and make it tumble a bit, or you could use it as a healing item for later. You could probably kill a zombie or two with a skateboard, or use it to travel faster around the map. New to Dead Rising 2 though were the combo cards, which gave the ability to combine weapons into new ones. Some of these combo cards are really cool and others are, I don't fucking know. All items take up space in your inventory. Some bigger ones like chainsaws and wheelchairs can't be stored, and everything has limited durability before it breaks. Legitimately effective weapons and items are pretty scarce, so it kinda adds to that tightly timed gameplay loop, where you're gonna want to make room in your inventory and schedule to stock up on healing, weapons, and combinations that'll help you in the long run. It's very fun. I sorta promise. Actually, that's kinda where I should bring up something. All the gameplay stuff I've talked about so far work around the character being super restrictive to control. Like, it's not too tight or wonky or anything bad per se, but Frank is very limited in what you're able to actually do with him. Without a buff or item of some kind, the fastest Frank can go is a Sunday stroll, with later levels boosting it up to a light jog. Now that's being generous, a very light jog. He can do a little jump that helps him climb things, most attacks have a 2-hit combo, maybe 3 or 4 if you're lucky, and he can unlock some stylish action moves and maneuvers, but doing almost anything locks you in place and or leaves you open for a second. Every action feels like a commitment that puts a stop to your already glacial pace. So I imagine that everything I've described the gameplay as so far might sound like the polar opposite of the fun I've been promising this game has. But it's there, I promise. There is a nerve-wracking excitement and thrill that comes from managing your goals under these hectic circumstances, and the ways that you work to survive are actually a lot of fun. Exploring and learning the layout of the city is one of the most important things to do, thankfully along with being one of the funnest. Everywhere in the city feels like it has something useful that can come in handy at some point in some time. So even if there's nothing you need at the moment, exploring always feels worthwhile just to learn what's where. Also, again, the place's aesthetic is very pretty, but remember the limiting gameplay I was talking about? Exploring for items is also a very important way to work around that. There are a lot of items in this game that can really help your lacking mobility, in really creative ways too, like the skateboard, or a wheelchair, or a portable dumpster. It's great! The disadvantages of your character and the gear that can help make up for it create a gameplay cycle that honestly helped to make it funner than if Frank was just a capable person. Speaking of lacking capability, survivors. Now I've been calling these guys dumb the entire video, and they definitely are, but from what I hear, the AI is actually godlike here compared to Dead Rising 1, which, if that's really true, then there's a second reason I'm too pussy to play that game. But I still don't think the AI here is great. It's a little less than average, but I still wouldn't say it's a con. You're expected to guide and manage them until they're safe and sound. It really makes you feel like a leader or a hero, in my case a very irritable one. A tip for managing these people is that you never want to be too far from them, so if you're going too fast for them, make sure to just kind of run around in circles until they catch up. Make sure to have a gun on you too, in case someone gets caught by a zombie, so you can shoot them out. You can aim for the zombie if you want, but I personally go for the survivor. Tough love goes a long way, and they need to stop dying or I will kill them. Speaking of guns, never give them one. If they already have one, trade it for like a stick or something, because the AI is not programmed to watch out for anyone. It only kills. And never ever take your survivors into a boss fight. I thought they could help me once, they died so fast. On that though, there are some parts of the gameplay that just don't work for me. The psychopaths might be another thing I'm outspoken on, because I did not like these fights. Now, it's not anything personal, they have great personalities, but the fights themselves are just not enjoyable. The gameplay system setup here is great for mowing down hundreds of zombies, but straight up awful when it comes to 1v1 fights like this. Your attacks are imprecise and slow, making it very easy to make a mistake and die. But even though the boss is very powerful and has specific times where they should be attacked, their AI is also really buggy and easily exploitable, making them very easy to jank around or get janked by. Overall though, the back and forth between you and the boss is just never very satisfying or engaging. Same thing basically applies to any enemies with guns in the game. You can awkwardly push your way through their bullets and smack them up close, or use the horrible shooting mechanics to get them. It's just not good gameplay. But most of the rest of the game is though. That's most of what I wanted to say, but there are a few other things I should mention. Even more than the new area and old main character, I think Off the Record's best addition was its sandbox mode, which allows you to explore Fortune City with no time limit, fight some bosses, and do challenges. You don't really have time to fuck around in the main mode, which is why I think this addition is so great. It's just really fun to be in this game world, and this mode really gives you the opportunity to appreciate that. You can also use it to cheat and farm money and XP for the main mode, but who even does that? I don't do that. No way, that's crazy. Oh yeah, speaking of money, there is money in this game that you'll need to collect for some story and side segments, and if you want to get out of a pinch when you really need help. There's also photography, that's pretty funny sometimes, and bugs. This game's not really clean or pristine. I think the gameplay's pretty indicative of that, but what I'm really talking about here are the constant crashes, on PS4 at least. Now, it never corrupted my goddamn database, so, you know, that's nice, but every once in a while the game will just get tired or something and quit. It's not like a constant problem, but it's present enough that I gotta keep it in mind. Just don't go too long without saving. The last thing I want to mention is co-op. Now, the game's well over 10 years old. Finding someone online is rare unless you drag someone on to play with you. But if you can, the game works insanely well in co-op. There are almost no restraints, you can play through the entire thing with someone else. It was great the few times I was able to do it. Because this game is great. Kind of. I don't know who the hell to recommend this to. I guess it's a good survival game, but it's a very specific survival game. It doesn't really feel like any other, for better and worse. It manages to balance out stress and dumb fun in a way that makes it entirely unique. So, if you really like zombies, or being stuck in vibrant, cheerful environments that juxtapose the horrible reality of your situation, or constantly needing to manage droves of dumbasses who will get themselves killed, this is your game? Oh, so parents and teachers. In conclusion, Dead Rising 2, very good game. Happy Halloween. Fuck, I like this game so much, I'm gonna risk playing the first one. If my PS4 dies because I play this, I guess I'll have an excuse to be irresponsible.